Hello and welcome back. So to start talking about thematic maps, let's imagine two scenarios. What if in your province you would like to use surveillance data to visualize the number of acute respiratory infections per district? Or what if you would like to find case aggregates related to an infection source in an outbreak? Maps are the answer. But how could I build them? Today we're going to learn how to plot Choropleth maps and dot maps. So let's start. Okay, so here are our learning objectives. You can stop the video to read through it, but basically we're going to use ggplot2 package and the geoms function to create these two types of thematic maps. Okay, so let's start with Choropleth maps. So what is a Choropleth map? It is a thematic map that uses colors or shadings to represent geographic regions in relation to the value of a variable. For example, larger values could be indicated by a darker color, while smaller ones by lighter ones. So how to plot it? First, we need to know that in general all the spatial data can be plotted with ggplot2 package, and specifically with one geometry function, the geomsf function. You can show colors or shapes by using the as function that belongs to the mapping argument of the geometry function. And within the as function, you can use the fill, color, or size arguments to specify the variable that you would like to look at the thematic map. So let's start with a quantitative data example. A quantitative data Choropleth map requires specifically the fill argument. And for this, we're going to use the AfriCountries dataset from the AfriLearner Learn Data package. So the AfriCountries dataset contains the administrative boundaries of all the countries in the African continent. And two steps are going to belong to this map. First, we're going to set up the ggplot2 and geomsf functions to plot the Africa countries only, and then we're going to add the population variable using the fill argument to color each of the countries. Okay, so let's start with looking at this data frame first. So we're going to use the asTable function to take a look at the AfriCountries object. It have the names, columns, and then they have three variables that belong to information related to each country. In this case, we're going to use the popest variable, which contains the population of each country. So as it was stated in our two steps, first we're going to use the ggplot2 function to specify the AfriCountries object into the data argument, and then we're going to use the geomsf function to plot all the Africa countries only. Okay, we see that we have a map with the coordinates in the x-axis and in the y-axis, and but it's empty. It do not contains further information. So let's see that how we can add the population estimates, and we're going to use the as function within the mapping argument and use fill within the as function to specify that we like to look at the population estimate of each country. And now we have one more layer above of colors, so colors that belong to the population estimate of each country. Let's make a little side note that from the geom_sf function, the sf part stands for simple features. And simple features are an open standard used to represent a wide range of geometric shapes. So let's practice this first understanding. Please take a look into the instructions for this practice question and create your first Choropleth map. Okay, so now let's move on with how to make a Choropleth map with categorical data. For this, we're going to keep using the field argument, and we're going to create a map with countries colored by their economical classification. And for this example, we're going to look into the data of countries from the natural earth package. If we add a geom_sf function to this object, we see our base map, that our map contains all the boundaries of all the countries of the world. But if we want to color each of them by a variable, we need to use the as function and the field argument. In this case, the economy function, the economy variable. Okay, now we have a map of the whole country, of the whole world, with all the countries categorized by their economy category. And we can identify in which part of the world we have developed countries, emerging region countries, and developing region countries. Let's look at this box of watch out comments. So before using geom_sf function, you need to verify that your data is an SF object. So how you can do this? By using the class function. With the class function, you identify that the AfriCountries object have two class within it. It is an SF object, and it also is a data frame object. So we're going to learn more about the SF, its structure, and how to convert foreign objects in the following lessons. So let's keep moving. How can I use a Choropleth map? Choropleth maps allow us to visualize how one variable changes across a defined region. For example, in this map, we can see how Ebola cases are distributed within Sierra Leone. In this example, our region of interest was the whole Sierra Leone country. And this country was partitioned into a finite number of subregions, in this case called districts. And we visualized the number of cases aggregated at this level. So let's add some vocabulary to these Choropleth maps. These Choropleth maps visualize a specific shape, which is called polygons. And these polygons collect data from an enclosed region, which was partitioned into a finite number of aerial units defined by boundaries. For example, you can collect data from zip codes, census tract, or administrative boundary levels of a country. So after learning how to make these Choropleth maps, let's look further into dot maps. So dot maps are also thematic maps that use dots to represent attribute values. The way that you can plot it is the same as Choropleth maps, but in this case you could use another type of arguments. Instead of the field argument, you can use the size or color arguments within the mapping argument of the geometric function. So let's take a look at how to plot quantitative data with dot maps. Specifically, a quantitative data dot map requires the size argument. And we're going to create one using the Africa capitals dataset, which contains the location of capital cities in the African continent. So, following the same steps as previously, first we're going to use the ggplot2 and geomsf functions to plot only the locations, and then size each of these locations according to the number of inhabitants in each capital city. So to take a quick look into this object, we have all the capitals in the rows of this data set, and we have the population associated with each capital name. So let's create our first dot map and use the Africa capitals to the argument of called data from the ggplot, and use the geomsf function first to plot only the locations. Okay, we know that with this plot will work. We have already the x and y coordinates and have the locations, but now we would like to complement this map by using the size argument. To specify the number of inhabitants, which is located in the pop variable as we looked previously. So now we have all the dots sized by the amount of the population for each capital city. Now each dot is proportional to the value of the population in each capital city. So now it's your turn. Take a look at the instructions and make your first dot map. Okay, so now what about categorical data? For this type of data, we're going to visualize the airports classified by type using the color argument. For this example, we're going to download airport information from the whole world and make our first visualize the scatter of these locations. So now we can see the whole map of the country, but in dots, where each dot is an airport. And we're going to use now the color argument to complement this this map with the classification of each of these dots. So we're going to use the color argument and specify the type variable of the airport's dataset. And now we see that all the airports are classified by their type, and we can identify in which parts of the world we have aggregates of a certain type of airports. For example, in Europe, United States, or Asia, we have aggregates of airports of type major. So let's practice again. Stop this video and go into the practice question, read the instructions, and plot your first dot map. So now let's talk about how to use dot maps. Dot maps are useful to visualize the scatter of your data and visually scan for clusters. In this dot map, you visualize the scatter of Ebola cases, and you can also classify each of these locations by their outcome, for example, deaths and recovered cases. This type of visualization allows us to identify aggregates of cases, like in the northeast zone of the map. So let's add some vocabulary to these dot maps. Dot maps visualize a certain shape called point. And these points collect data that register the location of random events. For example, geographical coordinates of individuals with a given diagnosis. As a side note, are you bothered by having just dots and not geographical context in these maps? That's good. We're going to see how to add this context with roads, rivers, and even more complex base maps. So look at the following lessons for this. So let's make a recap. Thematic maps visualize specific geometry types. Choropleth maps visualize polygons, while dot maps visualize points. So here is a summary figure of this. You can see that with dot maps, we use points, which are the individual X and Y locations of events, to make them. And in the other hand, we use polygons, which are 3 or more dots connected by vertices, to generate Choropleth maps, as we can see in the example of this box. So now practice. Please read instructions of this practice question and let's work further into these concepts. Okay, so now let's wrap up. In this lesson, we learned about thematic maps, and we learned how to create choropleth maps and dot maps using the GeoMSS function from the ggplot2 package. And also which type of geometry shapes they visualize. As a summary diagram of our lesson of today, we learned that thematic maps are of two types, choropleth maps and dot maps. Choropleth maps allow us to visualize polygons, while dot maps visualize points. And these names belong to geometry types. And we can use R packages like the ggplot2 package using the GeoMSS functions to create them. Now, how can we complement these thematic maps with more geographic context? In the following lesson, we're going to learn how to add physical features to our maps. Okay, so hopefully now you are comfortable with creating choropleth maps and dot maps. So see you in the next lesson.